What is the worst thing about watching football in the present and recent past? Could it be not wanting to celebrate in case your team's goal is ruled out by an attacker's fingernail? Could it be celebrating a last-minute winner, only to be crushed by a dubious officiating decision? Is it the inconsistencies in red card and handball decisions? Are you a Man United fan? I'm joking. Maybe it's the Premier League's brain-dead way of reviewing offside decisions, turning something as black and white as goal line technology into subjectivity and something that is prone to human error. Regardless of if you like it or not, it seems VAR is here to stay. So, I'm going to break this video down into 7 topics. We have inconsistencies, incompetence, pride, confusion, interpretation, clear and obvious, and the impact on the wider game. Inconsistencies. It would only be logical to think that 2 very similar challenges or handball decisions would yield the same punishment, right? Well, from watching the Premier League over the past 5 years or so since VAR was introduced, this has been far from the case. Decisions frequently contradicting decisions made in other matches only days or hours before. This challenge is petulant, it's soft, there's not a lot of force, it's not a red card. But if that is a red card, then how did the red card that Alexis McAllister got for this challenge get rescinded? It makes no sense. How is this not handball and not a penalty, yet this is handball and is a penalty? Realistically, neither challenges warrant a red card and neither handballs warrant a penalty. But if you then go ahead and give one, it's a massive injustice not to give the other one. Incompetence. VAR was implemented to reduce mistakes and human error. How is it that human error right now is more prominent than ever? Matchday officials and those in the VAR panel are employed to officiate football correctly. We now have more safety nets than ever, yet it seems that more decisions than ever are being incorrectly acted upon. The PGMOL have already racked up a pretty terrible record in a relatively short period of time. And those officials have so poor footballing common sense that they even requested for ex-footballers to join the VAR panel, which was rejected. It seems like pretty much every single weekend in the Premier League is home to a flounder by the referees, whether it's acknowledged by the PGMOL or not. You have one job, that's to make the right decision, just do it. I'm sure you've all heard it, but just listen to this.
2D line on the boot.
Stop. Check complete, it's fine. Perfect.
Yeah. Off.
Thank you, mate.
Wait. On-field decision was offside. Are you happy with this?
Yeah.
Are you happy with this?
Offside decision, goal. Yeah. That's not what it does.
What?
On-field decision was offside. Are you happy with this image?
That's fine.
Yeah, it's onside. The image we gave you is onside.
Left back.
He's gone offside.
Out.
Delay.
Clear.
Ollie's saying to delay. Ollie's saying to delay.
Red throw.
Pardon?
Ollie's calling in to say delay the game to complete. The decision is offside.
Cut anything.
It's absolute chaos, it's confusion, there's 3 or 4 different people talking to each other at the same time. There's no wonder they made a mistake. The only person with a bit of common sense there was the replay operator who was basically calling for the game to be stopped, who was trying to communicate somebody else's point back in the hub of VAR or whatever, that this game needs to be stopped, something needs to be done. The funny thing is that... Right, okay. If the ball is out of play, surely that is a perfect opportunity to go, you know what? We've made a mistake. Nothing's happened in like the 10 seconds where the ball's been in play. Let's just blow the whistle, give the goal, and own up to making a mistake. No one, surely that is the right thing to do. That is the right thing to do. It surely must be. Why do you have to abide by protocol and say, no, we're putting our foot down. We are getting this decision wrong. You're shooting yourself in the foot. But unfortunately, it doesn't stop there. This wasn't awarded as a penalty. It is the most clear-cut foul I've ever seen in my whole entire life. Onana misses the ball completely and absolutely clatters into 2 Wolves players. How is that not a foul? You can sugarcoat it however you like and say, oh, we must protect goalkeepers, but this is verging on like an American football tackle. I mean, that's all I have to say. So there's another incorrect offside decision here that we see. A match between Brighton and Crystal Palace. Estupiñán scores what seems to be a pretty good goal until, of course, VAR comes in to do a little bit of a check on the offside situation. Honestly, the angle that we see, what we actually see is, you can't really tell. It looks level, and, well... Yeah, they actually apologised for this from the PGMOL for getting it incorrect because it wasn't offside. Now, to me, this is even worse than the Diaz goal situation, because that was obviously onside. They correctly identified it as being onside, but just basically didn't really communicate that properly to the people on the pitch. But they just straight up got it wrong. They thought it was offside, and it was actually onside. This, to be honest, brings us nicely on to the next point. Pride. When the referees, VAR or the PGMOL make a mistake, they never take the blame for something, they always deflect it. And when they do eventually apologise for the mistakes, they always downplay what happened, they never really acknowledge the magnitude of, what happened and how it could affect the rest of the season. It's almost passive-aggressive. In other competitions and leagues, such as the Champions League, the Serie A, and the World Cup, they have semi-automated offside technology implemented. The Premier League reviewed that technology and decided, oh, it's not good enough for us. And you've just got to think about that. Why? Why would you want your officials to come under the spotlight when they inevitably get another offside wrong because they're manually basically deciding the offside decisions? We've seen the angles of some of the offsides and they're absolutely terrible. Like, you physically cannot tell if somebody's offside from some of the camera angles. When you were a child and you were trying to measure something, did you ever just kind of put your hands out in front of you, to a random sort of length and just kind of see how many of those you could fit in a certain area to measure something out? That's the kind of way I feel like they do offsides in the Premier League. Oh, it's about right. Yeah, that's offside. It looks offside. The whole point in VAR is so we don't have to do that. What I'm trying to say is the Premier League needs to swallow its pride. It needs to apologise when it has to apologise. It needs to put the right things in place when it needs to instead of just deflecting blame. And when it comes to offsides, get that automated technology implemented as soon as possible so you don't come under any more scrutiny for the inevitable mistakes that you're going to make. Confusion. Most of the time, when you're watching football on the television, you can kind of see what's going on when there's a VAR check going on. If it's an offside, you can see the lines that are being drawn manually if you're in the Premier League. If it's a potential red card, you can see the foul in slow-mo over and over again. If you're in the stadium, you have no idea what's going on. Here's the thing, if you're in the stadium, for instance the Diaz offside, if you're a Liverpool fan and you're in that stadium, you don't know whether that's offside or not. And when it's given as offside, you can kind of accept it because you just assume that the VAR officials have done what's supposed to be done and got the decision correct. And most people are not really going to say anything at the time because they can't really tell. But the worst thing about that decision is there was nothing from VAR when you were even watching it on the television. It was even more confusing. Us as football fans are completely and utterly left in the dark, especially when watching the Premier League when it comes to VAR, and I really do think that is because they're scared of making mistakes live. It is blatantly obvious that there has been many tens if not hundreds of mistakes that have been swept under the rug this season due to VAR in the Premier League. Obviously, the really major ones have been sort of not dealt with at all. But they've been acknowledged. VAR is the right thing for football. It's worked in rugby for so long. But I personally think that there needs to be a live broadcast of VAR. If you're in the stadium, you should have a live broadcast of the audio. If you're watching it on TV, then the audio would just back up what you see on the TV anyway, the visuals of VAR. I really do think that needs to be done because otherwise it's really confusing. Interpretation. Referees and officials officiate football games according to the rulebook. If multiple people read the same book, it's not far-fetched to think that people are going to interpret that book differently to others, leading to a massive amount of inconsistencies regarding refereeing and officiating football in general. VAR, of course, is implemented to iron those mistakes out, but those VAR operators have also read the same rulebook, and they also may interpret a rule differently to somebody else. What we see here is the handball rule in the Premier League. According to the Premier League guidelines, a player will be penalised for handball if the hand/arm is clearly away from the body and outside of the body line. The player clearly leans into the path of the ball travels some distance. Now, honestly, that is incredibly vague. The ball travels some distance. Why not say the ball has to travel a certain amount of yards or metres? The player clearly leans into the path of the ball. Well, what if the player kind of leans into the path of the ball, leading to some people thinking he is leaning into the path of the ball, and other people thinking he isn't leaning into the path of the ball? The hand/arm is clearly away from the body line. How far is clearly? The handball rule is completely and utterly subjective. Why do they not just say you can't stop a goal-scoring chance? And if it's not a goal-scoring chance, then it has to be deliberate. And by deliberate, that means that you actually have to move your hand or arm towards the ball. I can understand it being slightly more difficult in and around the penalty box because if somebody shoots and the ball gets blocked by somebody's arm, regardless if that's intentional or not, that should be a penalty because you stopped a goal with your arm, which you're not allowed to use. Just use common sense. And I really, really despair with some of the decisions, especially when it comes to handball. It's like they're not even watching the same footage. There's many other rules that can be subjective due to different interpretations of the rules, but I think handball is definitely one of the main ones when it comes to interpretation. Clear and obvious. VAR was introduced into football to correct clear and obvious errors. And I think it's quite clear to say that VAR, the referees, the PGMOL, whoever you want to pin the blame on, have completely and utterly lost sight of that. Now for me, it's almost as if they go and look for problems rather than correcting clear and obvious mistakes. And the amount of clear and obvious mistakes that slip through the cracks is just utterly confusing. But once again, what is clear and obvious is subjective. There's been plenty of times this season where somebody's been sent off, and at the same time, somebody completely unbiased doesn't even think it's a foul. And unless VAR was completely automated by AI, and the rules of the game were actually clear and not incredibly vague, then what is clear and obvious is always going to be a little bit subjective. But VAR at the moment doesn't correct clear and obvious errors. Well, it does correct some clear and obvious errors. However, there's a ton of other things that have been impacted by VAR that realistically shouldn't have even been touched. And that to me is a fundamental failure. Impact. It's clear that the PGMOL really could not care less about the impact of their incorrect decisions on the game. The game is constantly interrupted, it's constantly stop-start, it isn't smooth flowing, it's not great to watch. Sometimes we can be waiting for 2 to 3 minutes for a decision that at the end sometimes isn't even correct. Sometimes a very, very obvious and simple decision takes 2 or 3 minutes to decide over. It's sometimes not a great watching experience. Now last year there was a game between Anderlecht and Genk in the top flight of Belgian football. Genk were awarded a penalty when it was found that one of their players encroached the box when the penalty was taken. Well, the penalty would be saved anyway, and it's actually found out that there was also at the same time Anderlecht players encroaching the box, meaning that what should have happened would be the penalty to be retaken. Instead, a free kick to Anderlecht was given. The ironic thing here is Genk actually won the match regardless of this error, but still reported it. And now that match is to be replayed. The Belgian officials clearly realised the impact on the greater game, and that was that it was just a straight up incorrect decision that impacted the whole game. Not only does it then impact the game, it impacts the rest of the season. Because what if for instance, what if one of those teams miss out on the winning the league or being relegated, or they get relegated by just a matter of a couple of points? That game could be to blame. Over 20, maybe even close to 30 now, errors have been identified in the Premier League this season, and not one of them has warranted something like this, where they replay the game. Now, if there's an error in pretty much every game, like it seems there is at this point, then of course it's not feasible to restart or replay every game. But if something can be proven, then I don't understand why they can't do it. If other countries can do it that have, let's be realistic, not as good league as the Premier League, you know, they don't have as much money, they don't have as good players and so on, why can't we do it? There's no answer, because the answer is they can do it, they just won't. And that's because they're too stubborn, they won't swallow their own pride for the greater good of the game, and quite clearly and obviously, they could not care less. If there's a team in the Premier League this season that gets relegated, misses out on Champions League spots, misses out on winning the Premier League by just a matter of a couple of points, and those couple of points can be attributed to a VAR error, then I would not like to face the backlash of that. And that will just about wrap up this video. If you want to see me make more videos about any other football topics, then please leave your suggestions in the comments. And if you've enjoyed today's video, I would appreciate a subscribe. This is the first video of hopefully many, and it has taken quite a long time to make. I'll see you in the next one.